Hello, I'm Anjana Meenakshi. I'm a reporter with the News Minute, and we have with us Mr. Prem Panicker. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks. Thank you. How can I help you?
Eh, So you could help me by answering a couple of my questions real quick. One, what is something absurd which is happening in the world of sports journalism, specifically in India? If you had to pick on one, maybe two things right now.
Uh, I think the single most absurd thing that's happening in the world of sports journalism is that we are spending a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of resources telling people about something that they can see for themselves, which seems to be, it makes no sense in any way that I can see. The other thing is, sport is not just about scorecards and what the outcome of a match is. There is so much more to sport, but we have reduced it to two things: one, outcomes, and two, celebrities. And in the process, what we're doing is we're doing journalism a disservice, we're doing sport a disservice, unfortunately.
Okay. So, what do you think sports journalism should focus on? At the top of my head, I can think we need to focus on how athletes are potentially suffering because there isn't enough support they get. And that's one of the things I can think of. But what are other gaps which, in thinking, which journalists, specifically sports journalists, lack, which you think they can fill if they thought about a couple of bits and bobs here and there?
Well, every major athletic tournament, and I'm glad you mentioned sports journalism as opposed to cricket journalism, every major athletic championship that's happening, two things happen. We pick a team. The team is announced with a considerable degree of hype. There's a lot of talk about Khelo India, and there is a lot of talk about this, that, and the other, and how we're preparing for this, and how we need to host the Olympics. Blah blah blah. We go there, we come back with minimal or no results whatsoever, and then there's a lot of breast beating where we say, how can a nation of 140 million, in the first place, 140 crore or whatever, in the first place, it's not proportional representation. This is, 140 crore gives you 50 medals versus 40 crore gives you 5 medals. Doesn't work that way. But we do a lot of breast beating where we ask, how can 140 crore people not produce it? This breast beating happens in the media. And what strikes me as absurd is, who are you asking this question to? Aren't you the one who's supposed to be finding answers? Aren't you the one who's supposed to be talking to the administration of these various sports, saying, okay, where are we going wrong? How did you prepare for these? What was spent? What infrastructure was created? How did you prepare? Was that adequate? What have you learned from this? What are you going to do for the next major tournament that's coming up? Shouldn't we be finding answers instead of simply asking questions like, why are we not producing more athletes? Find the bloody answer. That is one. I'm not suggesting that all at sports coverage should be gloom and doom and critical, but I'm saying that look at sport not just from what happens on the ground. Look outside, because what happens outside informs what happens on the ground. We talk, for instance, about why cricket is seen in a fluorescence of talent. Why did that happen? Because partly because of the IPL, partly also because of cricket's growing popularity, infrastructure started developing in places that were not traditional cricketing areas. I mean, look at the number of people who come from places that we can't even identify on a map unless we look closely. Why does that happen? Because now you have practice grounds right there. You have coaches right there. You don't have to come all the way to Mumbai or Chennai or Bangalore or one of the traditional cricket centers to get your initial training, right? Where is that happening in sport? So why are we not asking?
Alright. Okay. What do you think independent media has to offer while covering sport in general? And just generally, what do you think independent media has managed to do, which other media has been either chosen to be blithely unaware of or has ignored completely? Why do you think independent media, simply put, matters?
Yeah, I'll leave the sports thing alone because it's part of the larger equation. It's not a different form of journalism. It's just a different beat. I think what has happened over the last several years is that what we call mainstream media, which is legacy media is a better way of putting it, has for one reason or the other found its credibility eroded the erosion of credibility, which is largely the fault of the media houses themselves and the people who run it. I'm not talking about the CEOs, etc. I'm talking about the editors, who are too willing to misquote Advani, to crawl when asked to bend. Uh, Bottom line is credibility is ruined. The other thing that has happened, which is not talked about as much, is that some of the best talents that used to exist in mainstream media have left because they just can't be party to this anymore. And suddenly, say, alternate media like you guys at News Minute or News Laundry and some of the other small sites that are punching way above their weight, what they have done is given a home to some of these talents. More importantly, they're doing some of the things that mainstream media leadership should be doing, which is when you have young journalists coming into the profession, teach them the ropes, teach them ethics, mentor them, bring them, show them what they need to learn, guide them, move them up the ladder of ability, and also make bloody sure that they don't stray into, clickbait and all the rest of it. I think some of these non-traditional media houses, some of the, what you call the independent media houses and stuff like that, have done that beautifully. And in another age, maybe 20 years ago, I would have said, yeah, okay, a small house and not much relevance. But today, when mainstream media is letting me as an audience down, this becomes, the importance of alt media is magnified to an extent I can't even quantify. I think it's brilliant.
Lastly, events like the Media Rumble, which the News Minute and News Laundry are organizing, do you think what kind of space, rather, do you think is a yes or no questions, but what kind of space do you think it offers to a lay reader or a lay consumer of news? What do you think it does for them, if anything at all?
See, I think one of the things is, we did talk about media credibility earlier in this interview, but one of the things that I notice when I talk to lay people is, while they understand the decline of mainstream media, there are a lot of questions that they have, and they don't know where to go and find answers. And these are not things that we write about, right? We don't sit and write about why mainstream media has lost its credibility. Partly our unspoken rule about we don't talk about our own profession, but also partly because that's not a news story, or it is, but it's something we don't touch. But these questions fester in the minds of people, and I think some events like this, where questions like this and similar questions that are not part of main news coverage are being discussed and debated, when this gets around to the audience, it actually informs them further about what is happening in a space that is very relevant to them even today. So I think, yeah, if the panels are well planned, if you have articulate people coming in, if they are willing to speak without restraints, and the organizers are willing to allow us to speak without restraints, I think it's a brilliant thing.
Oh, all right. Thank you so much. That'll be all. Thank you.